Well, Agent of Doubt made another video about catchphrases and mottos that do not represent what they're supposed to stand for. And my issue with that. And probably 85 to 90% of his video was going into long explanations of what those different catchphrases and mottos are supposed to mean. It seemed kind of silly to me to do that. I've made it clear that most of these actual movements and ideas are things, most of them, are things that I agree with. But he acts as though, because I have a problem with the way that they're worded, the catchphrases and mottos are worded, that I have a problem with the ideas themselves. And it's just weird. I mean, all of dismantle whiteness, dismantle capitalism, defund the police. Those three things are terribly worded. When people hear them, they think something that does not represent what they're supposed to mean. He went on at some point after the first 10 minutes, which was more just explaining what one of these phrases is supposed to mean. He started blaming the misunderstanding of these phrases on the people that misunderstand them. That the left should take no responsibility at all for people misunderstanding the message. And that's weird to me. The left bears some responsibility for this. I mentioned something that I've already mentioned a couple other times, and I'll mention it again in this video, is imagine if the women's suffrage movement, imagine if, the people that want women to have the right to vote, if they would have used the catchphrase or motto, matriarchy now. And they made pins that said matriarchy now. And that was their big motto. That's what they'd chant. Do you think people would have went for it? Probably not. Okay? I have no problem with catchphrases and mottos that actually represent what the movements and ideas are about. I've already said, I think more than twice, that I have no problem with the phrase Black Lives Matter. I think that was a good motto. If some people are pissed that it doesn't say Black Lives Matter too, that's too bad. Just the phrase Black Lives Matter isn't offensive. It's simply not. And it represents what the movement was about. We are the 99%. That represented what the movement was about as well. There's nothing wrong with that phrase. Occupy Wall Street. Another one. Good phrase. Seems reasonable. It doesn't give people completely the wrong idea of what it's about. Then he brought up Colin Kaepernick. What is it? Kaepernick. With his kneeling during the national anthem. Yeah, if that pisses people off, too bad. That's one of the most peaceful ways of protesting possible, and people still had a problem with it. But that's too bad. It was a reasonable way of protesting. It was some people's reaction to it were completely unreasonable. But it wasn't lying. It wasn't saying things that don't represent what it's about. It was reasonable. My issue is with the catchphrases and mottos that do not actually represent what they're supposed to mean. Going into long explanations as to what they're supposed to mean doesn't change the phrases and the catchphrases and mottos. It doesn't change those things. Putting all the blame of the misunderstanding on those who misunderstand it is just, it's the left not wanting to take responsibility. It's as if he thinks that if he just explains it the right way, it will make the motto or catchphrase better. And it just doesn't work that way. Doesn't work that way. Another thing that he did in the video, closer to the end, was to explain the exploitation that comes from capitalism. And I understand that there's some exploitation that comes with it. I get it. That doesn't mean that the entire point of capitalism is to exploit people. That doesn't translate to that. Now, if you look at things through a Marxist lens, which he was trying to get me to do, then I guess that would be true. I was kind of disappointed he brought up Marx in his explanation. We shouldn't have to look at everything through a Marxist lens. And I understand that there are things that we can do, a number of things that we can do that can make capitalism work better, and be more equitable. Lots of things we can do there. Lots of regulations, lots of new laws in general. Lots of things to stop the exploitation. Sure, I agree. But as I've said before, when people hear the phrase dismantle capitalism, they're going to think that someone is viewing capitalism through a Marxist lens, and that we should replace capitalism with the notion of the people owning the means of production, which never works out that way. It always ends up being the government owns the means of production. And that has its own set of things that make people's lives miserable. Maybe it's not exploitation, at least not in the way that capitalism does, but it still has some negative things, especially in areas of trying to be exceptional at anything. Why try to be exceptional when there's no reward for it? Why try to do things better than other people when there's no advantage to it? It also just basically makes everyone equally miserable. That's what results from that sort of thing. And that's what people think of. Now, I'm not saying that's what you're arguing for, but that's what people think of when they hear the phrase dismantle capitalism. Now, to you, it's their fault. The people who think of it that way, it's their fault that they're misunderstanding it. And I just think that's a very absurd way to view it. If we want people to understand, make the catchphrases and mottos represent what they actually mean. There are plenty of ways that these things can be worded that still cause controversy, but aren't misrepresenting what they mean. I hope that he understands this in this video, and he doesn't just make another video response that tries to explain what these catchphrases and mottos are supposed to mean again. As if, again, if he just explains it the right way, it suddenly changes what those catchphrases and mottos are. So, anyway, thanks for watching, and just saying.